Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Leadership Adventure. Today I'm here with founder Ania Wysocka. She is the creator of the Rooted app, and I'm really thrilled to be here with Ania today because we both share a Polish ancestry, and we've talked a lot about time in Asia when we were both spending time in school and at work, etc. And we decided that it would be great to talk a bit more about our experiences because I feel like that they've really contributed to shaping our journey as leaders. Welcome, Ania. Great to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Ania, where did this journey start for you? I'd love to hear really from the beginning, how your personal story shaped you and shaped this creator journey for you.
Yeah, well, I think from when I was little, I always knew that I kind of wanted to be my own boss, and started as early as just finding different ways to like make pocket money in school, and with my family members after school, whether that be by drawing and sharing pictures to dog walking, all sorts of little babysitting, all sorts of little projects I worked on so that I could be in charge of my own pocket money and stuff. And then I think, you and I talked about how when I moved to Poland, I really experienced people putting a lot of like honor in their work and having a lot of honor about their work. And I think that definitely rubbed off on me, just like watching my grandpa with his work. Every night after dinner, he'd have his session in his library and I would go bug him and watch him. And then after that, another influence for sure was when I was in Korea, as you and I discussed. And so, actually going to school in Poland. So I did elementary school in Canada, middle school in Poland. And that was quite a shock because the educational system was definitely more difficult, going from like a colorful, fun classroom in Canada to then more of, at the time anyway, like quite a strict blackboard, no toys, no frills kind of classroom where the level of difficulty was just much more extreme. And I didn't even speak Polish fluently. So that was a bit of a shock to my system. And then I just learned a lot about the Polish educational system and then the work from just observing my family. And then in Korea, fast forward there, I was back in American school. So school felt much easier. But I just observed so much hard work and ethic outside of the classroom and just from different people that I met.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always think about your experience because we had these experiences in like the opposite direction. I came from the Polish school to a Canadian school, and I remember thinking, wait a minute, I've done all this math before up until I think grade 3 level, right? So I was actually kind of bored and thinking, what, what is this going to mean? And then I ended up getting skipped a grade because of that. So it was complicated to get moving because I didn't speak any English when I arrived, but my other, math and, science classes had been more challenging. What else did you observe, with these cultures?
Well, I think here in Canada and in general in the States, like I think we really value this idea of like overnight rocket ships or what we could how can we like cut the hard work to get the results quicker and more efficiently. And I guess through being in Korea and observing that, I mean, like after school, we would go to like kombubangs, which is like basically a room to go study in. Like that wasn't unusual. It was like after work's done, you have to keep working. And I think that certainly prepped me for not looking for those shortcuts and really just understanding that I do have to put in the work. And it wasn't like such a foreign concept to me. I wasn't really like looking for those shortcuts. It's like, yeah, if they happen, that'd be amazing. But I didn't end up experiencing that necessarily. So I think looking back, that probably really helped me. I didn't have this idea of like work-life balance there. And unfortunately, like I think that is hard to find as an entrepreneur if you are looking for results. I think even these days, I get a lot of questions of like, well, how would you have done it differently to have less work? And I'm like, I actually don't know. Like, I think I needed to go through the hard work and I needed to be really busy for a few years. And yeah, that impacted my relationships. And it did impact my like level of fun I was having. Looking back, I was like, oh, I wasn't really having much fun except for work. But I think, yeah, I think I like needed to go through that and put in the hard work and now feel like that's why I feel a bit okay that now my baby has become a teenager. It needs me a little bit less. I don't have kids personally, so that's my metaphor for it. But that's what it feels like. It's like, oh, I had this little baby. It needed me all the time and I needed to be on. And now I can go and hang out with my friends and leave it be and come back to it. And if it needs to grow, then it needs me still, but it doesn't need me for the day to day. And so that feels really good. It feels like I'm finally letting myself feel like I've earned it. I think at first it was like very much like, oh, I need to be working all the time. And I'm like, no, actually I put in that hard work and the results thankfully do show. And now I can learn how to find a bit more balance now. But for the first few years, for the first 5 years, I did not have much balance at all.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's a very similar experience, I guess. As far as, when you first started, that was 7 years ago, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And what were your first steps? How did that look when you first decided to do this?
Yeah, my first steps were really just drawing the app in a notebook. So for those who aren't familiar, it's a anxiety and panic attack relief app. And I was struggling with that condition myself. And then once I finally found the resources that I knew were helpful, I decided to try to create something for others. When it happened to me, I was in school, so I was on student loans. I didn't have a family doctor. I couldn't afford any of the resources I was being referred to. And those that were free were either a super long wait list or they just really didn't resonate. For example, like a group therapy session really wasn't as effective for me as in one-on-one, but I couldn't afford the one-on-one. And yeah, I was even in situations where I'd have way more anxiety after the group therapy than I did before it. And it just wasn't, unfortunately, working for me. And so I ended up going to a library to learn all this stuff, and I found some great work there. I learned about cognitive behavioral therapy and was finally able to figure out, okay, what works for me and how can I present this in a way that's just easy for others to understand? Because the other apps that I found, and there wasn't a ton of apps, by the way, in like 2017, 2018 in general. And then there was even fewer for panic attacks because that's such a niche subject. And so those that existed, there was one for hypnosis, or there was like a medical one that explained it very literally. And I was like, this is almost like more anxiety inducing to hear it in these terms. Like, I'd love for it to be still scientifically correct, but explained in a really simple way of somebody that really cares about you. And so, yeah, the first steps was to really draw it out in a notebook. And I created a app mascot named Ron. He was to represent anxiety and just the fact that ultimately, as hard as it is, like we do have to familiarize ourselves with the sensations and sort of let them occur. And he was just like a great representative of that. I actually have
I love
a
Ron,
little
actually.
plushie of him here. Yeah. So he
Yeah.
looks really friendly here, but in the app, you'll see there are images of him being quite upset as well. And
Okay.
so, yeah, it was really drawing. I'm a visual person, so drawing in my notebook was the first step.
And then what was the thing after that? So you had like this as a prototype, basically, the drawings?
Sort of. It was kind of like I drew the wireframes. Then I had to go online and figure out. Well, actually, first I went to an agency and I said, "Hey, how much would this cost to become an app?" And they said, "Well, it's this number." And I was like, "I can't afford that." And I was just like, "Hey, like what goes into that number?" And so they explained like, "Oh, we have to create wireframes. We have to then, make sure all the design has assets, like separate the background and create separate assets and all that." And I was like, "Okay." And then the development itself. And I was like, I'm going to teach myself everything but the development because that felt like another world. So then I just used YouTube and I was able to create wireframes, taught myself Photoshop and Illustrator at the time. That was like the program. Now I'd say I use Figma more, but at the time it was Adobe products. And yeah, ended up kind of translating these drawings from my notebook to something that could be used online. And then I found a student developer who wanted to give it a go. And yeah, basically put my savings into working with that person and launched the MVP.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because, for people that have never really thought about how to do this, how did you know what to do next? Did you, ask mentors? How did you figure this out?
No, I'm a big believer that everything's online. Like
Okay.
everything you could ever wonder. And so, yeah, there wasn't a ton on mobile app growth necessarily, but there was enough content on just apps itself. And then there was a ton on search engine optimization. So when it came to marketing the app once it was launched, I actually repurposed a lot of content for SEO and just did it like for my app, if that makes sense. So, for example, Neil Patel was somebody whose work I read on SEO, and then I would use that for the website. But then I would also almost like use some of his theories, especially ideas on copy and stuff, and translate that to Rooted, but for the App Store as well. So App Store optimization, basically. I spent a lot of time doing that. And then later on, because I didn't, yeah, I was working elsewhere while I started this too. So I was doing 3 days a week on Rooted and 4 days a week at another job. So I wasn't able to do
Oh,
full
wow.
time at the start. And so, yeah, later on, more app content came out by somebody who was named Darius Moravchik. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right. I ended up meeting him and I met Neil. So it's really cool. There's like 180 story of these two people that like actually whose work I followed. And then later on, because Rooted grew, I was able to meet them as well. But yeah, I followed content like that by these two guys. And then I was able to just sort of kind of, yeah, work it towards mobile marketing instead.
Right. Awesome. That's interesting. My partner is like that. He learns everything online. And I find, I love actually just having conversations with people, learning from
Mhm.
people. So it's interesting how we naturally gravitate towards these different ways of learning.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah. Even in university, I like didn't like going to lectures. I would learn more in the book later after the lecture than I did from listening. I guess, yeah, just different learning styles.
Tell us a little bit more about, like what were really the humps and bumps that you had to go through that were the hardest for you through this process.
Yeah. Oh, wow, so many. I guess bugs was a big one, just things not working the right way and not necessarily having the funds to like have a team around that to start. And then yeah, with mobile apps and maybe with web apps as well, basically sometimes you'll fix something in one place and something bizarre will happen in another place. I can mention the most recent one that because it still happens these days. I just didn't know how normal it was at the time because I was kind of more isolated. But
Right.
I just edited a survey in the app the other day, and the result was that now it doesn't show as completed when you complete a survey until you come back the second time. So it's just like random stuff like that, that even the developers don't, they're like, yeah, I'm actually not sure why that happened. But then we fix it and we work with it, which is fine. But I think at the beginning that was all more stressful for me. I'd make an edit to text in the lessons and then the images of lessons would disappear. And I think everything when you're starting out feels bigger than it needs to be. And I think because I had my first couple thousand monthly active users, I was so stressed about making everything perfect for them. Whereas
Mm.
now, like even with much more monthly active users, I totally like all of us experience bugs and apps from time to time. It's not the end of the world. It's okay. And Rooted users are awesome for just letting me know too. Sometimes they'll, be mad about it. Obviously, we don't want that, but a lot of people will just be like, hey, I use this app and I need it, to function properly. So this, if you edited this, that would really help me make things better. And that's lovely. I love getting emails like that because we love to improve and people when they're just like nice about it, that's even nicer. Yeah, lots of things like that were stressful. I'd say I've worked with tons of different developers over the years. I've had like good experiences and like not so good experiences. So those were quite stressful for me as they were happening. But also, the more they happen, it's just, a hill becomes a molehill, or whatever the saying is. Like, now, if the same thing happens a year later, I'm like, that's okay. Whereas
Right.
before, it would have really bugged me and stressed me out. Yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, I'm thinking like on the marketing side, one big bummer was that I worked so hard. I put so much time into engaging. And back in 2018, the algorithm functioned differently on Instagram. You could really find people with hashtags, and you could really get people's attention in a different, like, easier than now. And I had grown the profile to like 10,000 followers, and it was all organic. And then I worked with an agency because I was like, oh, I think people's opinions is also a difficult one, which I can get to in a sec. But people are saying, oh, you have to hire an agency, you have to outsource, you shouldn't be doing this alone. Agreed, we can't do everything alone. But when I did, it went really, really poorly. And I still have regrets about that to this day. So there's all sorts of
Wow.
stuff, running a business, it's not that simple. And yeah, regarding people's opinions, I would often get people saying, oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. Just being able to like understand and get a feel for whether I think I'm actually doing it wrong or not, that's something that also took time to get that
Right.
skill. I think I was very quick to be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I am doing it wrong because this person I respect said so. But actually, they're not in this niche category, and maybe, they don't know everything. When you're a beginner and you're new to what you're doing, you kind of let other people's opinions affect you a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good point, right? To really know when, yeah, all this advice that we're given, if it's actually legitimate for our situation, because often it's not.
Yeah.
What is your like demographic? What's really the age range that your users are? Is it a younger population?
Well, this is kind of an exciting part. So, when I first launched Rooted, it was meant to be for women 20 to 35, maybe 20 to 40. But it's since expanded so much. We have parents using Rooted with their kids. So we hear often from parents saying, hey, I use this at bedtime to help my kid go to sleep. We learn about anxiety, or before school, when they're feeling anxious about their day. So that's been a super awesome surprise. And then on the flip side, we also hear from folks from senior care homes. We've even heard that it's helping their populations. We've heard from children of adult parents that say, hey, this is really helping my parents or my dad, and so forth. And then there's obviously a group of men, because panic attacks are more frequent among women, but it's not like men don't experience them as well. And so that's been another, just great demographic. And we welcome everyone. Basically, we've been validated from, for adults using it, but now we also have pediatricians prescribe the app.
That's incredible. I'd love to hear a bit more about that. How did that happen? How did you end up giving it to pediatricians to prescribe?
So that one came to us. They were looking for a solution for their youth population, and they wanted to see if Rooted could work for youth population. I think because of the illustrations, it's pretty like age agnostic, I'd say. Like, we don't have adult content in there. It's a problem that adults deal with, but there's no like adult specific content. But we said, hey, review it, and this is what we share, and this is what you can review. And after that, they chose to prescribe it. So that's, it was more like an internal kind of analysis on their end. But the scientific validation, that's something we did with the University of Victoria. And we've also had some internal uh, analysis of like how people are using the tools, like anonymous aggregate, kind of collecting like, okay, this is how long we're now able to say like, hey, we can stop a panic attack in under 2 minutes, which is huge because sometimes you have to go to the
Mhm.
hospital for hours, and it's a very unpleasant experience that
Yeah.
I've experienced myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, Anya. I have had, the anxiety attack symptoms myself, and I ended up in the hospital in Bali thinking I was having a heart attack.
Mhm.
And then I ended up flying back to Australia instead of to Europe, where I was supposed to go, because I was really, afraid of going
Mhm.
anywhere, and had to be in the hospital for 3 days. and they ended up giving me Xanax in Bali, which helped me at the time. And then when I was in Australia, they said, "Oh no, we don't prescribe that here. That's,
Yeah.
addictive." So it was quite the experience. And, I really wish that there was something that I knew I could have done differently
Mm,
in that moment, because in Australia, they ended up giving me Valium. And I took it for a couple of days and I put it aside and said, I can't take this stuff. I was just completely out of it. So,
mm,
slowly over time, I was able to come back to myself. But
yeah.
definitely it was a very, like it wasn't a quick thing to get over. It was
Yeah.
probably a good few weeks before I was able to really recover from that. And I know that it was induced because I was driving a scooter on really crazy roads in Nusa Penida Island, and stopping, starting, all of this stress that I had when vans were passing me over a couple of days. So it just built up, and then came suddenly with chest pains, and it looked like it could have been a heart attack. So it was really scary. And so I
Mhm.
appreciate the experience that people go through, and how much benefit they get from having access to your app, and the time that you've invested to create this is huge. So I think it's important to acknowledge that. And I'd love to hear how many users you have now that you've been building for quite a while.
Yeah, so we've got over, or first of all, I'll say that's a really difficult experience, by the way, and something that, I mean, doing this again for this many years, we've heard so many different stories from people, and yeah, it's just a really hard time. Panic attacks can be really debilitating and really scary, and so to have that experience abroad, I feel for you, and yeah, I
Thank
think you
you.
understand also
I'm
why
glad I
people
had
end up in the
insurance.
hospital. Pardon?
I was glad I had insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of our members are in the States, and yeah, we hear stories for they say, I wish I knew of rooted before I was medically evacuated by helicopter, and now I'm going to be in debt for so many years. I was like, yeah, it's definitely something like 1% of all ER visits are due to panic attacks. And so to have a tool where
Yeah,
you can actually go through and manage it in the comfort of your own home is the goal, right? Yeah.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
now at over 4 million downloads, and almost all of that is organic because we don't do a ton of advertising. I'm doing a bit more nowadays, but yeah, the whole first bit of Rooted, the first million, 2 million was almost like no advertising, and now it's at maybe 10%. So yeah, I'm
That's amazing.
just really surprised and also so happy to see that people are finding a solution.
I'm really, really thrilled that it's been so successful organically. You mentioned a little bit about, the fact that it's being prescribed. Is that both in Canada and the US?
That is in the US for now. That's where main partners are.
And is there anything else that you'd like to share about how that came about?
Thankfully, honestly, word of mouth, the user reviews, in ranking for the word panic attack and anxiety, and really, it's the users that make that happen. Like, yes, we focus on making an amazing product, but then the users, then if they are downloading, engaging, leaving a 5-star review, referring to a friend, that cycle and that that loop or cycle is just really positive for apps, and that's how we get that word of mouth, and we rank high on the stores. So meaning the App Store and the Play Store
Yeah,
for that
wonderful.
category, right? It's still a very niche category. It's not a high volume category, but we're also frequently featured now by Apple, and we've been featured by Google Play as well, which helps as well.
That's fantastic. And what about, like who has been most important for you in this journey, and the support that you've had as a founder, where has that come from?
I'd say probably on those days where I didn't feel like doing it anymore. That comes a lot from user reviews. It comes a lot from memories of my mom. And, I think the silent support that I would get would be like from my partner when I was starting out, just like really help. Like I would work until like midnight sometimes, and I really wouldn't. Yeah, I just having that silent support, whether that be just like in prepping meals or whatever, that was really lovely. So yeah, I'd say those people, and then all the brilliant people that write books and post stuff online that I can learn from.
Right. And have you been, part of any supportive networks as well, like with other entrepreneurs that you found beneficial?
Yeah, I'd say mainly what I've gained from those is like friendships with other
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, and sometimes we are eccentric, strange people. So it's kind of fun to connect with others and have a group for us. Um, yeah, there's a few. So I've engaged in app groups. That's the best for like apps. But then, there's very few apps in those groups that are for niches like mental health. So then, or like specifically panic attacks as well. So then we're integrating into like behavioral health networking groups. That has been good for the more of the business to business side that really focuses on healthcare. Rooted is kind of funny. It's kind of like in between. It is an app, but it's also a healthcare tool. So it's like a bit of both. And so even in the healthcare space, most of the groups there, they're not apps necessarily. And so I'm kind of, yeah, sometimes it's hard with Rooted because we're also bootstrapped. And so when I was engaging
Mm.
earlier with companies, they're mostly VC backed. And so then when I was in these entrepreneurship groups, it was kind of hard because do have a different journey, bootstrap versus venture backed. Now I feel like there's so many more bootstrapped apps, which is awesome. And I'm engaging with them. So yeah, different groups.
And that's something that I'm exploring a lot right now. I'm really enjoying that power of collaboration and doing something together rather than solo at the moment. What
Yeah.
what was the, because I know last year we were celebrating that you were on Necker Island and you were invited there. Tell us a little bit about that experience. I know that you went for an awesome bike ride.
Yeah. So the group is called Forming Impact, and it's for social impact entrepreneurs. And yeah, it was an incredible experience. We arrived, there was about 40 of us on the island. We were there for, I think it was 4 nights. No, yeah, I think 4 nights. And quite a few of us were doing panels and stuff. And then Rooted was in the first one. So myself being in the first one. And at first I was like, oh, that's stressful because I don't know people yet. But then I realized that's actually like a quick way to meet 40 people because then you already do your introduction. And so you can
Yeah.
skip a lot of small talk. So that was a really great experience. And then meeting Richard, I mean, I had read all of his books since, I guess being in school. And along my journey, I would like go for runs just listening to his audiobooks. So it was really fun to like meet him in person and just to see how he enjoys life. And he was just really positive and really sporty, which again I think is like a quirk of like eccentric entrepreneurs. Like I think we can be extreme. At one point, the bike ride you're talking about, we were just going uphill and we are all in so much pain. It was like the hardest bike ride I've ever done. And he's like 76 now. And it was over the span of, I think, 2 hours, but we went up almost a full kilometer in elevation on these windy roads on this island in the British Virgin Islands. And there's like cars coming, and we had like a medic behind us because it is dangerous and it's like quite steep. Yeah. And we were going up this hill and just like in so much pain. And we were talking about how like entrepreneurs really do this sort of stuff to themselves. And yeah, there's a lot. Like a few of us were like ultra marathoners as well. And it's like, yeah, that's a weird group of people. In a great way though, right? Like I really enjoyed my time there and hanging out with Richard and yeah, getting to meet others, just doing cool stuff around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember you mentioned that you saw him at the airport as well with his wife, and he's now passed away since. So how lucky that you had that opportunity to go at that time, right? You just never know how quickly things can change.
Yeah, totally. He flew back in economy with us. And I remember people were coming from first class. They were like, "Oh, you should have my first class ticket." He's like, "No, I'm good." He was just so cheerful, and even on his way to the washroom in the plane, people would stop him and they want to say hi and stuff. And he was just really patient and just kind of down to earth. And I thought that was quite lovely. And then at the airport, yeah, meeting his wife, she was really positive. He had told her, he's like, "Anya did this bike ride. She did it with me today." Like, because he does it weekly, but it's like, I guess he tries to get the staff to do it. They were telling me, they're like, "Nobody wants to do it." Like, like it's a really intense bike ride. And then his wife Joan was like, "You did the bike ride?" Like, "Oh, like he's been trying to get me to do that for decades." And it was just, she was so positive. She was like, "You go, girl," that kind of attitude. And it was really nice. And yeah, lovely
Oh,
family, I
that's
thought. And yeah, and even when I told them, like, if you weren't doing the bike ride, I don't know if I would have done it. And he's like, "Are you kidding me? You would have done it even if I wasn't doing it." Like you're intense too. And it was just like a really nice exchange. She was really kind.
What do you normally do to stay fit? Because I don't think I could have tackled that bike ride at this stage.
I have the same routine that I've been following for over a decade now. And it's funny because I've talked about it. I guess I've mentioned it on podcasts, and it's really nothing special, but it is something that I just like fall back to. And it's alternating between full body workouts or just body workouts and running. And specifically, I'll do like plyometric circuit training. So I do that for like my legs one day, then I run, then I'll do my arms another day, then I'll run, and then I'll do either full body or abs, depending on how fit I'm feeling. And then I'll run. And so I do that. So typically I'm active 6 days a week. But for the bike ride, I don't know that I was that prepared. I definitely felt like quitting a few times. And it was very tempting because the medic van is right behind us, right? And Richard, he even said, he was like, "Don't like overdo it. Like, hey, if at any time you want to stop, it's totally fine." And when you hear words like that as you're in pain, it's so tempting to stop. So, yeah, I don't think that was my fittest. But yeah, I survived. I wouldn't say I thrived. I survived though.
What an awesome experience to have with him, and just
Mhm.
yeah, it's so great to hear what he's like in real life, and of course that's someone that is an entrepreneur that a lot of people have followed for many years, and to meet him in real life, it's an awesome experience. Ania, thank you so much for taking this precious time to share your leadership adventure with us. So, the highlights and some of the challenges. I think it's wonderful to learn from you, and for other people who are thinking of creating something, it's an inspiration to look at what you've done. So really celebrating your success with Rooted, and I'm so glad that you've got 4 million people that are benefiting from it now. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me on. It was fun to chat.
It's my pleasure.